Today is Sunday, February 26th, 2017. This is Celtics Beat on CLNS Radio, and I am Larry H. Russell. Episode number 198 of Celtics Beat, which this week is being brought to you by Blue Apron and SeatGeek. Annual tradition, the man is here once, and it's always on this day, the Sunday after the trade deadline. The Boston Herald's Steve Bulpett, long time Celtics Beat reporter for the Herald. And so, Steve, you have the invitation to interrupt me here, but one of our listeners, Matt R., sent me a message on Facebook immediately after the 3 p.m. deadline back on Thursday, saying that this was the best Celtics non-move since the infamous Justice Winslow near trade with Charlotte on draft day a couple of years ago, which the Hornets reportedly declined. And thank God. That would have been a debacle of biblical proportions. So, that actually got me thinking when that was presented to me, and I was very happy after the Celtics retained that Nets pick back on Thursday as well. But as good of a personnel guy Danny Ainge is, just how lucky he has gotten on some moves that presumably to one degree or another he really pushed for, or at the least had interest in making. The rumors were out there, and it sounded legitimate. And this is why I need you. So once again, interrupt me if any of these were complete BS at the time. But it's just recollection of my entire memory. I go back this first summer here. He wanted to trade Antoine for Latrell Sprewell, the summer of 03. Didn't get the best return for Antoine Walker because of Leif LaFrence's contract, but he was able to get first-round draft choices, which were very important. So Antoine for Latrell would have been bad. Al Jefferson for Allen Iverson in 2006. Ooh, wow, that would not have gone over well, especially when Al Jefferson was the key piece to getting Garnett. And remember the first Garnett deal that included the number 5 overall pick? That would have prevented them getting Ray Allen and putting together that team. And I got my own. Danny told me to my face that he thought that in 2010, when the team was playing 500 ball after Christmas, that he thought the window had already shut on that group. Ray Allen for Monte Ellis was talked about. And then just down the line, and Pierce and Ray at the deadline in 2012 before the Eastern Conference Finals run. As we know, and a year and a half later, he flips Pierce and Garnett for the Hall, the Nets pick now. And then Kevin Love to pair with Rondo. Everyone was really hoping for that. But so actually, here we go, Steve. No Jimmy Butler, no Paul George. They have retained that Nets pick. They've retained Jaylen Brown, the Nets pick the following year. Everybody else. So I ask you, I don't know, point blank, is this that again?
Wow, it's a lot to digest. Look, I think that you have to look at this situation and say what was realistically available to the Celtics. And I don't think that what it would have taken to get Jimmy Butler from Chicago was worth what Chicago wanted. The Bulls think they're going to do a rebuild while still maintaining a competitive stance. And, that's really difficult to pull off. And they were going to try to do it through essentially gutting some of the Celtics' core players and taking the big draft pick. The Paul George thing became a non-starter for every team in the league, really, when Paul George made it known that he was either going to win in Indiana or leave to sign with the Lakers when he's in a year and a half. So, that's what you're looking at here. So, you don't really do either of those. So what's left?
Was it okay? I'll ask your opinion here, Steve. Would you have been okay with the Celtics putting this year's Nets pick on the table? Very simple, staple question, but I think this is what it all dials down to, and this is your basketball opinion.
Sure, absolutely.
You think they're good? My question to that is, does that not create a situation where, and this is my argument, where they're not quite good enough to win it this year, and then in 2 years, all of a sudden, they would have 85% of the salary cap tied into Al Horford, Isaiah, Paul George, or Star X, and then no Nets picks? That's 85% of the salary cap into a team 2 years from now. Is that a title contending team?
Well, first of all, they're not. If you trade this year's number one pick from the Nets, you're getting. It's more of a guarantee of you're getting a star. Certainly, if you have the number one pick overall and you take Markelle Fultz, there is evidence to suggest that he could be a transformative player. But there is that, that measure of unknown. Do we need to go through the list of number one overall picks in the last several years that have not quite panned out as expected? So, that's the thinking why you would give up a number one pick. But, look, if you can get a Paul George, if you could have gotten him at a reasonable price, you could still, it doesn't preclude you from making other moves. If you've got players left, you would have players left that have value. There are deals to be made. But, what they're thinking obviously was, in this case, was they'll take the draft pick this year and go into the free agent period and hope to score something there. But also, just because they didn't trade the number one pick now doesn't mean they're not going to trade it in the days leading up to the draft. That's when I think the pick will have more value, especially if things go well in the lottery in May. We'll see what the true value of the pick is. Also, teams tend to fall in love with players up the top of the draft as the draft gets closer. So I think that's where you see more of your major trades made. So I wouldn't say that they've totally written off this prospect. You'll also have time then to potentially, if you can work things out with Indiana, you'll have a chance to discuss this. Usually they'll get a window of opportunity from the Pacers to discuss an extension with Paul George or just discuss his future plans. It really comes down to a similar situation as happened with Kevin Garnett. Yeah, so you weren't going to get Garnett until you weren't going to accept a trade for Garnett until you had assurances that he was going to hang around.
I got to go back to that comment, though, that you made about, you don't know about the number one pick being a great player, whereas Paul George is great now. Jimmy Butler is great now. Whatever Star X is great now. My whole argument and thesis really is say, let's go to, we'll use the Garnett comparison for fun. That Celtics team, as it turned out, they were a piece away. Certainly, we didn't expect the championship that first year, but they were Kevin Garnett. As soon as they acquired them, I think the Celtics ended up being they were third in the NBA that year, or even second in terms of odds of winning a title after they got Garnett. So that certainly catapulted them to the top of the league. It just goes back to the simpleton argument that I make about I'm not sure Paul George or Jimmy Butler catapults them to the top of the league. And then, you don't know if Markelle Fultz is going to be a star. You don't know if Lonzo Ball or whomever, and go all the way down the line, Isaac and those guys are a star. But first off, you maintain tremendous flexibility in the assets that you do have. And then the whole salary structure, like I said, it just goes back to, you having about eventually, in a year from now, after this year is over, you have 80% of your salary cap tied up into three players who I just don't think constitutes a championship core where, there's a huge unknown about Markelle Fultz, but he's only going to cost you, a couple $1 million on the salary cap for the next few years or so, and you got to keep all your assets. And I know you're very close to the Celtics organization. What type of flexibility do you think the Celtics put a premium on when it comes into terms of how they view this current group?
Well, first of all, with your argument, and I don't want to get into an argument about this stuff because it's not what what we're here for. You're assuming that everybody on the roster now is still on the roster. Then, you're precluding the idea that they could make other moves, So I don't know. I look at this going forward and saying their idea is clearly, as I wrote several times leading up to this, what I was hearing from GMs around the league was that Ainge had placed a large premium on having the ability to be a player in the free agent market this summer. So clearly Ainge believes that he has an opportunity he wanted to keep available a max salary slot. You would have to think that he has at least an idea that he can get something, or I dare say I don't think he'd be that protective of the ability to go into the market. So I read into that what you wish. But, hey, look, the best thing for this team would be to get the number one pick, make the number one pick, have it be Markelle Fultz, have him be the transformative player that many people think he's going to be. He's a guy that can play even though he's a point guard, he can play in a backcourt with Isaiah Thomas off the ball, and then have money for a free agent and get a large free agent this summer. That would be the ideal scenario, but things have to work out. And when you look back at the Celtics, going into the draft in 2007, this team was the Celtics were in many ways behind where this team is.
Well behind in my eyes, but sorry to interrupt you.
They turned the number 5 pick into Ray Allen. They end up getting Garnett because, at least in part, for the major reason I got Garnett was because the owner in Minnesota said he wanted Garnett off the team. Basically, hey, we're not doing well giving this guy a whole bunch of money. You know, we can lose just as well without him, anchoring down our salary structure. So that was McHale was under orders to move Kevin Garnett, and the Celtics, because of developing assets like Al Jefferson, etc., had the best package to offer. This was not, I've written it 1,000 times, and people just still like to play the old narrative, which is false, that McHale gave Garnett to the Celtics because he's buddies with Ainge. That was the best offer. It was either that or an offer led by Andrew Bynum from the Lakers. So, if you look at things and say, okay, well, this is where it is, there are other moves to be made. The night that they traded the number 5 overall pick for Ray Allen, I'm thinking, if there's not a corollary move to this, then I don't quite get, how bringing on this older guy is going to help you.
Love reminiscing about that Garnett trade. I remember that well, of Andrew Bynum and Lamar Odom for Kevin Garnett. And I think Phoenix had something centered around Sean Marion, but certainly with the direction the Wolves were going in, a package of young players at the time was better. Anyways, back to the present. And you talked about Markelle Fultz. That sort of like sent a little dinger in my head. And I was watching a few of the terrible television shows on some of the corporate networks where it was like, if you pick Markelle Fultz, he's a point guard, and you already have Isaiah Thomas. And I don't understand. It's like, if the Celtics pick Markelle Fultz and they have Isaiah Thomas on the team, I'm sorry, am I going to wake up with smallpox the next day? No, we know what the Celtics are going to do. First off, he's a rookie point guard. He's not going to come right in and just say, hey, Isaiah, I'm taking 30 minutes of your game, of your time. But he's obviously going to have to work his way in. But that plays into an interesting scenario about Isaiah Thomas. I know I said let's get back to the present. Now we're really looking ahead. So the Celtics have Isaiah. He's always been very involved with recruiting players, and not even just recruiting players. But can I safely say, Steve, and I think you'd allude this, maybe I'm assuming wrong, he is a little more involved in personnel decisions on the Celtics than, say, Jonas Jerebko. Am I right to assume that?
I'm not sure. I think that if there are cases where there's a player about whom Isaiah might have knowledge, I'm pretty sure the front office is asking him. But I would assume that's the case for every player on the team. If there's someone they're looking into that may have been teammates with the guy on the Celtics now, they're going to talk to that player and say, tell me about him.
So I'll get right sort of the point to Isaiah, because it seems like he's not really the captain, but he's kind of a de facto captain, or just really a most important player. And this is a point-blank question and kind of a hot-takey question, but I'll still run with it and ask you anyways. The hypothetical of Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, any of these other point guards, they select him, they draft him, or any other situation presents itself, could the Celtics actually move Isaiah Thomas next year? And this is just a way out there, blanket question, but I'll throw it at you anyway, Steve, because I know you're good at it.
Yeah, I think every player is movable. Ainge has shown that he won't pay a guy more than he believes he's worth. He traded Kendrick Perkins before he got to that point. That didn't work out, but in theory, you were bringing in Jeff Green, who was supposed to prolong Paul Pierce's NBA life, and Kendrick Perkins, who, again, you weren't going to pay that year, and who gets to Oklahoma City, and Oklahoma City all of a sudden is looking to move him right away as well. I mean, I think that's one of the most difficult things that Ainge is having with making trades, is that some of the players he's given up have gone to the next place, and really, it's that team has looked bad for making the deal. So, so back to the point. Do I think Isaiah is tradable? Yeah. I think everybody is. I don't think there's a guy on this team that is quote unquote untouchable. The question in every player's case is, what's the price? You've got to make a decision. I did a column a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago. My mind is gone right now after a week of trade deadline.
Archives at BostonHerald.com, listeners.
Yeah, but it was basically saying, among the factors heading toward the trade deadline, and one of them was, you got to figure out how much you want to pay Isaiah Thomas. And I will say this. When Isaiah got here, and even when he started playing well, I'm thinking, this is nice, but his best role on this team is going to be eventually as a sixth man. And every time I come to a conclusion about Isaiah Thomas, he kind of goes ahead and proves me wrong. So I've decided that any opinion I have on Isaiah Thomas will remain fluid. Look, the guy's done really well, and especially this year, he's taken a giant step. And I think it's fair to wonder how much of that, at least in part, is because of Al Horford and the kind of year that what he's allowing them to do, and how his presence spreads the floor. No one plays in a vacuum here. You know what I mean? So Isaiah is playing extremely well, but it ain't just Isaiah. It's part of the entire package.
Yeah, one of the things too with Isaiah in regards to that, let's say hypothetically, you just say, as you get further on in your career, or more, someone else develops, or whatever presents itself. I feel like, I'm as big of a fan as Isaiah too, and I made the statement here to Bob Ryan. I've told him privately as well. I've been following the team since 1991, Steve. So I'm a little. I hope I don't offend you, but I think this is the best single season offensively.
Is this where I jump in and tell you to get off my lawn?
Yeah, I actually get the I'm old part. So because once you get north of 30, it's old. But this is the best single season offensively, I think, in Celtics history with Isaiah. And because of that, I think there is almost a point of no return with him in regards to that, because you can't really go back to him and say, oh, yeah, we're gonna have you be sort of like our Andrew Toney type off the bench guy.
Well, he's not going to become that, But I mean, look,
and never accept that.
Well, yeah, true. I mean, look, that's part of his thinking, and you can disagree with his view of his view of the NBA world order, but it's because of having pie in the sky thoughts that Isaiah has gotten to where he is.
Thank you for downloading another edition of Celtics Beat, the #1 podcast on iTunes, which covers the NBA's winningest franchise. Today's broadcast is being sponsored by Blue Apron, the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. And they are the best for a reason. Blue Apron has established partnerships with over 150 local farms, fisheries, and ranchers across the United States. And the best farming and harvesting practices gives you delicious meals that you can cook for and with your family and friends. It all comes out to less than $10 per meal, saving you time and money while building strong family bonds. From cashew chicken stir-fry with tango mandarins and jasmine rice to roasted pork with apple, walnut, and farro salad, Blue Apron gives you variety and flexibility to match your tastes. And as a loyal listener to Celtics Beat, I encourage you to go check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/CelticsBeat. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. That's blueapron.com/CelticsBeat. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Today's episode with Steve Bulpett is also being brought to you by the SeatGeek ticketing app. As the Celtics playoff push heats up, SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every game. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. I have the SeatGeek ticketing app on my phone, and it is by far the easiest way I've found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats such as the Celtics' huge game at the Garden this Wednesday against LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it does not end with sports. SeatGeek also has plenty of concert, comedy, and theater tickets available as well. And best of all, Celtics Beat listeners can support this production and get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. To do so, download the free SeatGeek app, go to the Settings tab and click Add a Promo Code and enter promo code CelticsBeat. That's CelticsBeat, all one word. And SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. Download the free SeatGeek app and enter promo code CelticsBeat today. On to this deadline, so everything is going to be a Monday morning quarterback type thing, as it always is in the NBA. Oh, Danny Ainge should have picked Giannis Antetokounmpo in the draft. Ha, 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 ha. So everything in regards to what happened back on Thursday is going to be looked back. Oh, why did I do this? But I don't think that's the case. Certainly, Danny is going to look pretty good if some guy from Utah ends up signing with the Celtics and they keep all the draft picks and they end up adding a player for nothing more than the salary and they still have all that flexibility. Anyways, the one instance in which there is one where you can say, like, that's one I think you could just say something about. And that is the DeMarcus Cousins thing. And for all people of me to say that, because I just did not allow DeMarcus Cousins discussion on this show ever. Like, it's something that was entertained on pretty much everywhere else for the last 3 years. And for me, I treated it like, Turkish nationals, discuss the Armenian genocide. It was not allowed. But the DeMarcus Cousins thing is interesting because, he is technically an elite player, and the Celtics, from what we know, didn't really pursue that at all. So once again, I'll go back to asking of your astute basketball opinion on that decision.
Well, they did not pursue DeMarcus Cousins. I've been kind of doing it in one order, but let me take the second thing first. I'm not sure the Celtics had what it took to get him. And because, look, you're not going to give up the Nets pick this year for DeMarcus Cousins. It's too risky, right? So let's start there and realize that the potential number 1 overall pick and the chance to get a transformative player under a rookie contract, so have him under your control for the next few years, you're not doing that for a guy that's clearly had emotional issues and all that. So the Kings wanted to get a first-round pick this year. They wanted, immediate, I want to get something out of this here. And the owner also was enamored of Buddy Hield. And understand, too, that the Sacramento front office had to sell the owner on trading DeMarcus Cousins. The owner had become, strongly tied with DeMarcus, and he's our franchise player, he's our best player, and we're going to keep and build around him. So the front office had to convince the owner. So Buddy Hield was a shiny object that they liked. He's a potential, very decent player, and that number 1 pick. So I'm not sure the Celtics were going to be able to give them the number 1 pick this year that the Kings wanted, that would make the owner happy to make the deal go through. But in terms of not even really pursuing him, the important thing is to get the best intel you can on any player that's out there. One of the benefits of being around the league for a billion years is that a lot of times I'll know if a Celtic player is available, and I've said this before, it's nothing new or crazy. People in the league, GMs or people you've have dealt with over the years, occasionally I'll get a phone call, and it'll be someone, a GM or someone asking me, what about this guy? And that will let me know that player, usually a Celtic, is available. It's just kind of like an information thing. And I think, not that anything I tell an NBA person is going to be chief among his decision factors, but clearly you try to find out as much as you can. The Celtics have a guy who played with DeMarcus Cousins. Does anyone think that if Isaiah Thomas had gone to Danny, or certainly Danny asked him at some point, but if Isaiah Thomas's reply had been, hey, this guy would be perfect here, the other stuff about him in Sacramento is a bunch of junk, he'll be great here under the right circumstance, this would be the perfect situation for him here, he's a fantastic player, you got to get him. Does anyone think that if Isaiah Thomas had said that to Danny Ainge, that Danny Ainge wouldn't have pursued DeMarcus Cousins?
Every report, too, and that's a great point that you brought up, Steve. Why we had you here, but everything that you heard from over the years, Grant Napier, when he comes on this network, I think the few times I've talked to Grant Napier, for those who don't know, long time Kings play-by-play voice, who has been very critical of DeMarcus Cousins, even when he was with Sacramento, but I mean, I remember throwing things at like Jeff Goodman, and Jeff, covered DeMarcus when he was at Kentucky, and was just like, don't care, no way, no how. Coach Nick, same thing. He would be at Sacramento practices and just said he, would never see anything like that. And I know there is right now going on Sacramento, there's sort of a Boston Red Sox kick you on the door on the way out. They're leaking all sorts of things. But there's just certainly just so much to that, and it's why I've always sort of been on the fence about him. No matter how talented he is, there's just been so much in regards to him, and I think he's too far down the line. Actually, real quick question: was there anything to I don't know if you know this, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But was there anything to like Danny Ainge thinking about him, and then Brad Stevens just saying no way? Is there anything to that?
No, I don't get that at all. I mean, people are throwing it out there without any evidence that that's the case, and Brad Stevens is a bright guy. Brad Stevens wants to win, and it takes talent to win. He wants talent, and he'll figure out a way to make it work. In the case of Cousins, though, I mean, look, I did a thing on him in, I guess, December when they were around here.
I think December 7th they were here.
Spoke to a bunch of guys in and around the Kings organization leading up to that, and by every account, he can be a real good guy away from the court, but I think there's some issues there, some emotional things going on that that it's like something will click within him and it'll be off the rails. And I don't think he's necessarily a bad guy. I just think that there are certain things within him that lead him certain ways, and I don't entirely blame DeMarcus Cousins for that. I think it's just, each of us has certain predispositions, and I think that there are larger issues with DeMarcus. There are guys, there are guys around the Kings say, he can be a really good guy. He's bright. He can be sensitive about certain things, but all of a sudden a switch gets flipped, and you get the other DeMarcus. And when I've discussed him with teams in the past, over the past couple of years, it keeps coming back to, here's this wonderfully talented player. I mean, he does things that are freaking amazing, but if it's the playoffs and it's Game 7 and you're out on the floor, how deeply do you trust that, DeMarcus Cousins is going to, keep it together? Or be able to, or
like a Paul Pierce in Indiana type thing. For a little throwback there.
Yeah, but that was, what do you call it? That was an immaturity thing, I think. You know what I mean? And I think that's a different situation. I don't think Paul had, emotional issues here. And if you look at those circumstances, that was just kind of, look at the people that were involved in that whole thing on the team, et cetera. That was just, that was crazy. But, did you ever, once Paul Pierce reached a certain level in his career, did you ever worry about him deep in a playoff series? Did you ever worry about, is he going to, go off the rails? He might go off for 30 points, but he probably wasn't going to go off the rails.
Yeah, you didn't worry about him certainly in that regards in the playoffs. Anyways, real quick question. You can do real quick. There was some criticism and some talk, I guess you can say, that the Celtics, they have this glaring issue at rebounding, and they may not be as tough as they were in prior years. And I believe they're something ranked like 19th right now in defensive efficiency. That the Celtics did not make moves to address that the same way Toronto did. Washington really didn't address that because that's not really an issue. But they made smaller moves. Now, I've always said that, trading in the NBA, it's the hardest league to make deals in because of matching salaries and all that. It's not like in hockey where you can just, go out and, like, if you need defenseman depth, you can get a third defenseman. Or in baseball, you can trade, like, cash considerations and prospect to go pick up a relief pitcher or something. It's harder in basketball, but maybe one thing I guess I could look at is maybe there was so, because you threw P.J. Tucker's name out there about a week ago, and of course, as we know, the Raptors picked him up. Was there anything along the lines of that maybe the Celtics were so keyed in on Paul George and Jimmy Butler deals that they didn't have time to make those moves? Or was it possibly something along the lines of they just wanted to hold on to every single asset that they did have to, have for the ammo to make a big, superstar swing move?
Well, let's take the guys that are out there, first of all. I think they were not really in on Andrew Bogut. I don't think they saw him as
not a fit.
That was going to work out. I think I can tell from talking to agents, they did have interest in P.J. Tucker, and the Suns just chose to go elsewhere with that. I think the Suns might have been able to get more from the Celtics. They chose to go elsewhere. The other guy that I think that I'd heard from out west was the Celtics did have interest in JaMychal Green, and it would have cost a bit, but at a certain point, Memphis said no, that's not really going to. He was. I guess everybody's available for the right price, but essentially the Grizzlies pulled back on JaMychal Green being available for something. So that kind of, put those things into perspective. And then let's look at the larger picture here. I wrote it this past week. If you're not gonna win it this year, then how much value is there in going out and spending an asset, even a small asset, on a small improvement right now, when one of the things you've got in the pipeline is your number 23 pick from last year, Ante Zizic, who is playing well. He's 20 years old, and there's always a chance that it doesn't work out. But he made the step from Croatia to Turkey, and he's played very well there. I checked in with Gigi Datome this week, and I said, look, I need the scouting report on this guy. And he came back, and it was a really good report in terms of this guy's ability to develop. He's a big guy. He will be someone who can help them rebounding-wise. So, if he's able to come in here next year and for rookie contract money, give you the rebounding help that you're looking for. And I do think once they get their roster together this summer, even if it does include Zizic going forward, that the Celtics will try to get some veteran rebounding help as well. But, does it make sense to spend an asset when you're not going to win it this year, when you've got at least something coming that could help this situation next season?
Yeah, remember they had to and you remember this well because you originally reported the Kevin Garnett trade back in the summer of 2007. They needed to throw the entire kitchen sink. It was like those Ryan Gomes that put that deal pretty much over the top. They pretty much need everything that you had. That's a funny thing, though, that you brought. I want to go back to when you discussed that the Celtics may have or may not have offered a better package for P.J. Tucker, a little wing there from Phoenix, who would have brought a lot of toughness to the team. They may or may not have. I wonder if that goes back. I hope that, say, Austin and Mike Zarin aren't ribbing Ryan McDonough a little too much for the past 2 years over the Isaiah trade.
Yeah, I'm not sure it would come from the Celtics, the ribbing. But, look, it's, these things are hard to figure out and what teams want. And when you're trading your picks, the team that's receiving them also has to kind of gauge where are those picks going to be, right? Even if it's second-round picks, are they going to be in the 60 range? Or are they going to be, high second round? And, there are players to be gotten there. It's like everyone's obsessing right now over the, what happens if the Celtics fall to 4?
Oh, no.
And it's like, okay, let's take a look at the two guys that you were really hot after and you were willing to spend that pick on this past week. Jimmy Butler, okay, well, let's start with Paul George. He was the number 10 overall pick. Jimmy Butler was the 30th pick.
They passed on him too, right?
Well, yeah. So it's like, guys develop, and it's so easy to just look past stuff. You're going after Jimmy Butler, and you look at your number 3 pick from this past June, Jaylen Brown, and I looking this stuff up, and his numbers, he compares very favorably to Jimmy Butler's first couple of years, and he's 2 years younger at the similar time. So, you've got to make educated guesses here, and you look at a Brown and say, okay, here's this guy who's wonderfully athletic. How hard does he work? How much does he want it? Well, in those two areas, that's clear that here's a guy that is willing to put the work in and go after it. That was the case back when he was in high school. The coach at Georgia Tech, I wrote this during the summer league last year, offered him a scholarship, I think between his 8th and 9th grade years, because he just saw, first of all, how gifted the kid was, but how hard he worked when he was coming into open gym sessions at Georgia Tech. So, you're looking at, you need a guy like Jimmy Butler. Well, Jimmy Butler now wasn't Jimmy Butler when his first couple of years in the league. You may have that guy already on your roster, and let's see what happens when Jaylen Brown gets minutes, gets experience. The improvement guys make over from their first year to the second year for the true players is usually an incredible leap. Because guys have had a year to figure things out, to understand stuff, and all of a sudden they're in the off season, they're out of the blender where the world is moving by them so fast, and they get to go into an off season and really put in work. And by all accounts, this kid is a huge worker. If Jaylen Brown doesn't become a star-ish player in the NBA, it is not going to be from lack of effort.
Well, I was just ready to ask you almost what your thoughts were on Jaylen Brown as sort of a final question. If I could make one quick point, and this sort of goes back to Butler's development, I thought he benefited tremendously from being on a winning Chicago team that was in the thick of things in the Eastern Conference playoffs back then. If you recall, Butler's rookie season they actually threw him right on LeBron in a game on national television. If that was my first memory of Jimmy Butler, is like Reggie Miller just like fawning over him of the defense that he was playing on LeBron. And sure enough, if you actually remember a game in Cleveland at the beginning of the year when Jaylen had his first real breakout game and a Celtics blowout lost against the Cavs, it was Reggie Miller fawning against Jaylen Brown. So last question I'm really going to get your out. You sort of gave sort of your opinion on Jaylen Brown. I know you make these types of calls. If you did actually end up making them, what was your sort of gauge of Jaylen Brown's value around the league?
Oh, I think people see. Look, again, you're looking at a 20-year-old kid, so I think he's got high value. He's number 3 overall pick, and the questions are, how do those guys once they get from college into the NBA? How do they look like they fit? And he's shown no fear from the get-go. The thing with Jaylen Brown is he'll make a couple of plays a game, when he gets minutes that are like, whoa, that was a real interesting play. Then he'll make a couple of plays that kind of make you turn your head like a dog seeing its reflection in the mirror, like, where did that come from? But that's going to happen. I just, as we're talking, and I remember looking it up in the past few days, but Jimmy Butler's first year, first of all, in the playoffs, his rookie year, He played.
I don't want to say
4 minutes. Okay. He played 4 minutes in the playoffs his first year. He played. I'm sorry. He played more in his second year.
That was the year Rose got hurt for them.
Yeah, but so he didn't play like at all his first year. 8.5 minutes a game. In his second year, he played more. But again, he was 2 years older and had more experience collegiately than Jaylen Brown. So I dare say that Jaylen Brown 2 years from now, what he's doing will dwarf what Jimmy Butler did in his first couple of years when you look back on things. So again, is that a guarantee of future performance that he's going to beat Jimmy Butler? No, it's not. But you look and say, okay, what are your physical tools, and how hard do you work at it? And in those two cases, those two boxes are checked for Jaylen Brown. Doesn't guarantee he's going to be a major player, but those are the two things you have to look at, and those are the requirements, I guess. And he at least meets those, and now you can take a step forward and say, yeah, I'm interested in seeing how things work out with this guy.
Boston Herald's Steve Bulpett. Follow the man on Twitter at Steve B. Hoop. Talk to you in 365 days, my man.
All right, be well.
Well, we got our money's worth with that one, didn't we? Let's see. Celtics plans for the summer. GMs around the league feel Ainge is confident the team will sign Gordon Hayward. Isaiah Thomas likely could have done something about DeMarcus Cousins did not come to Boston. And his role overall in some of these personnel decisions. So we got a lot of questions answered there. Even Ante Zizic, that should really make some of our tweeters content. I think one of the most interesting things that Brian McDonough may have kind of stiffed the Celtics with P.J. Tucker. I don't know if that's a little payback for the IT fleecing, maybe or not. But Danny Ainge, that's the big takeaway. Listen, really tight with the rainy day fund as of now. Good. He didn't really even push for a JaMychal Green type of guy. And oh yeah, Jimmy Butler, Paul George. I am ecstatic the Celtics kept that pick. I'm so happy. I could care less if it falls to 4. Paul George, he's going to be a Laker, right? He's going to go play for Magic Johnson. Magic, actually, that was the deadline, really, was the news with the Lakers. And I'm actually now kicking myself for as much as we got out of Mr. Bulpett, because I know Steve has a good relationship with Magic, and I should have asked for his take on that. I'm very interested to see what Steve would have thought, because for the life of me, I cannot see that one working for LA. I cannot. Magic is this super nice guy, like the nicest guy ever. He even signed a Celtic shirt for me once back years ago. That's my story. But his charisma has always masqueraded his off-the-court basketball intellect, which has not proven to be all that great when it has come to coaching or personnel decisions or analysis. When he was, I was watching an interview with him a couple weeks ago, and he bragged about recommending Isaiah to the Knicks, and it's like, dude, Isaiah was the worst GM ever, right? You know that? Okay, but the Lakers, they did get Kobe's agent, Rob Pelinka in as their general manager, former agent now, actually. No experience, but agents have done well in these front office roles in basketball and in sports. I know there are some guys in baseball, their names don't come to the top of my head right off the bat. I know Bob Myers in Golden State for one, the NBA, but I can't imagine Magic being hands-off. No way. I mean, his first move was firing the freaking PR guy. That's so Patino. One of his first moves was firing Andy Jick. Let's see, what does this team need? Oh, we got to fire the public address announcer. Kind of knew he was going to be a little hands-on then, no, right? But this is Celtics Beat, Lakers podcast over there. Seriously, do know that many in the Celtics realm take a keen interest in the Lakers' well-being. So if that is the case, I suggest to those listening to listen to those around that team far more than I am. So download Lakers Nation Courtcast on the CLNS Radio mobile app. A great show because they're getting enough downloads as is. Because those some beaches they usurp my position in the top 10 in the NBA podcasts for iTunes. So how dare they? So, well, they must be putting a pretty good product if that's the case. All right, final announcements. Why wait? Let's go. The ticket giveaway for the month of February, tomorrow's game against the Atlanta Hawks. Entry was simple. Following me on Twitter at CLNS_LHR. Winner of the ticket giveaway at Shane Oeck. At Shane Oeck, congratulations. Thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you, everybody, and those who won. And thanks to those who communicate with myself in this show. Because tomorrow, I'm a little discombobulated right now, going back to this whole trade deadline thing. But tomorrow, I'll be putting a mailbag video up answering audience questions on the Facebook page. Facebook.com/CelticsBeat, Facebook.com/CelticsBeat. You will see yours truly. And in said video, we will have details on March's ticket giveaway and also a March Madness bracket league, which we will do. Free entry with plenty of prizes, so stay tuned to that. Facebook.com/CelticsBeat for the mailbag video for audience questions and a whole lot more. We'll be back on schedule next week. Notice no pregame show today. It was all deadline all the time today, and I know there was the big game, too, on Friday. That was a tough loss, but we usually do the pregame here, so here's going to be our pregame today. Celtics have a game tonight against the Pistons. Hopefully they win that one. Because is that, the Larry H. Russell Celtics regression to the means? Is that coming? They've now bookended the All-Star break with two real tough, bad luck losses. Real bad luck loss against Chicago. And, of course, the Friday against Toronto. That one, that one could have some repercussions. But we will see how it plays out the rest of the week. It's a tricky week at that. A lot of games, good teams, a lot of travel. They got to go out west again. So we will see. Until next Sunday, because that is going to be it here for episode number 198. Music, Chuck Dietz, and Steph Legrato. Staff writer, Eddie Santiago. CLNS founder, Nick Gelso. This is Larry H. Russell. See everyone next Sunday for another edition of Celtics Beat, powered by CLNS Radio.